All right, hey guys, we're not going to make this really formal. I myself, I'm missing 3 committee meetings right now. So I think that's no exaggeration, 3. So my hunch is there's a series of different of our colleagues, both in the House and in the Senate. Brian Strickland was just in the Health Committee. I know that for a fact. I'm not sure where MMO is at, but my hunch is she's sitting in the committee. Yep, she's not yet. So my point being is we probably had great intent, but we didn't probably think through that we were 7 days away from sine die. And there's this little thing called sine die that we all need to be cognizant of in this building as we head towards it on March 28th. That being stated, what Commissioner Tanner and I thought we would do is do a really quick overview of forensic. We know many of you have been in presentations with the commissioner before, and I've heard them. We're not sure about the folks online if they've heard that. So the commissioner is going to go ahead and do a quick overview on that side, and then we're just going to open it right up for questions, if that's okay. Our feeling is if we can get this a little bit more interactive, be a little bit more value and a little bit more ROI. For those folks on Zoom, by all means, just go ahead, raise your hand, and we'll recognize you, and we'll get you off of mute, and then we'll have you go ahead and ask the commissioner a question. But until then, what I'd like to do is introduce Commissioner Cunningham.
Thank you. Looking around the room, I've met with a lot of you over the last week or so I don't want to try to repeat a lot of the information a lot of you have heard, but I will just very quickly talk about a couple of big initiatives and then just open it up for questions. And if there's something specific that you want me to talk more about, just your own online, just shoot a message and let us know, and I'll be glad to do that. So we've got 2 primary bills that are going through the General Assembly right now that are of a specific interest to us. Well, 3 including the budget. The FY amended budget, the FY24 amended budget was passed out, and that was a good budget for our agency. It's a good budget for mental health. The budget, FY25 budget, has passed the House, included the EH rate study and the IDD rate study, which are both huge initiatives. And we have been, for really 20 years as a state, needing to catch up. And the good thing is there's legislation or a law now on Georgia books that requires the rate study to be conducted every 4 years. So Georgia hopefully will not get in a position where it has to spend at one time an additional $150+ million. So very excited about all of those things. I have no reason to believe that the Senate will not pass the budget with rate study dollars in it. I've heard no negative comments from them about that. A lot of that has to do, though, with the fact that our advocacy community has really rallied behind this. They have met with legislators, governor's office, OPB, and others through the off session and really never took their foot off the gas. So I said this to a group of the advocacy community the other day, but I thank them and continuously for what they've done to try to help. Outside of the budget, House Bill 1344 passed out of the House prior to crossover day. House Bill 1344 does several things that was in House Bill 520 that didn't pass out of the Senate last year. One of the things I'm most excited about is it makes it easier for someone coming from out of state to get a license in Georgia. Right now, you have to have 1,000 hours of supervised experience before you can get a license in Georgia, even if you've been licensed and working in another state. We have a lady that works for us at the department, Carol. She's the director of adult mental health. She worked 12 years in Miami. She still has a valid Florida clinician's license, and she cannot get her license in Georgia. So we have workforce shortage in the state, so we're very excited about that legislation, and we hope that that will pass out of the Senate and we can get that across the finish line this year. Senate Bill 533 is actually being heard today now up in the House non-civil Judiciary non-civil committee subcommittee. That's being carried by Senator Brian Strickland. This bill is important to the state in several ways. A lot of you have heard me talk about the forensic backlog. Some of you maybe online have not. But we have over 630 individuals now that are in jail that have been ordered by a superior court or state court judge to come to one of our hospitals for restoration services. That is that individual has been found to be not competent but restorable by one of our forensic psychologists. On average, it's taken over 10 months for someone to get to a state hospital bed. Out of all of our forensic beds statewide, I have 641 forensic beds in the state hospital system. Half of those are taken up by individuals who have been ordered there, deemed not guilty by reason of insanity. So those are individuals who have committed typically very serious crimes, but a judge has made the determination that this person is not competent, and not only they're not competent, but they're actually not culpable, not guilty by reason of insanity. So they cannot be held accountable for their crime because of their mental state, and they've been ordered to the state hospital. On average, those individuals that we currently have at the state hospital have been there 9 years. So we're not turning those beds over. Keep in mind, a lot of these individuals were originally charged with murder and other very serious crimes. So if they had been competent, they would have spent their whole entire life in the prison system. My point though is I only have around 300 beds I can actually use for restoration services. So when you have over 630 people waiting on one and only have 300 I can turn over on a ongoing basis, the numbers are just not working. In addition to that, I have another 1,000 individuals who have been ordered for a psychological evaluation to determine are they competent. Out of those, about 67% on average will be found competent. So about 33% will not be. So that's another 350 individuals that will end up having to come to a state hospital. So 1,000 people in jail waiting on a hospital bed. So what we tried to do, other than raise the flag up the flagpole, to say at some point the state's really going to have to consider building more forensic capacity, because I think more and more people are recognizing, the courts are recognizing, that individuals in the criminal justice system sometimes have an underlying mental health illness that may be so severe they're not competent. And if they're not competent, they need to come get mental health treatment. And many times they may not be even able to be held guilty because of their mental state. So we're going to need more beds, but that's going to take some time. So in the meantime, what we've tried to do is we set up a pilot program at Cobb County in partnership with Cobb County Jail. Cobb County Sheriff set aside a wing of his jail for us, and his jailers staff it from a security perspective, but then there's clinicians there that are working with the population in that pod. These individuals come from different jails around the state. I think we've had people from 14 different counties in that jail, in that pod, and they receive restoration services. So instead of having to sit in jail waiting on a hospital bed, they can come to that facility and receive care and then go back and finish out their criminal justice process. We also that's been open since February of last year, and it's proven to be very successful. WellPath runs the clinical side of that for us, and they've held this up as a national model. In addition to that, we recently opened up 14 beds down in Chatham County. We also have, as the budget that passed the House, and also the budget that passed the Senate for the FY24 has money for a 30-bed facility down in Dodge County. Dodge County has a DJJ facility that's no longer open, but it's in great shape. We're currently doing some renovations to that facility. We want to open that up, and we'll staff that with staff out of the Central State Hospital, so the people will receive the exact same level of restoration care they would receive if they were at the Central State Hospital that we operate. Gil Sutton, the hospital administrator there, will run the clinical side of that. So that brings us to Senate Bill 533. One of the things we want to make sure in code is that we have the legal ability to operate these types of programs. And that's what Senate Bill 533 does. That came out of a work group that we put together from the Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission. That work group was chaired by Judge Kathleen Goslin, who's been on the bench since 1987. in Hall County between state court and superior court. She's the chief judge there. She runs the mental health court, a great advocate for mental health work in the state, been the president of Superior Court Judges Council in the past, well respected across Georgia by everyone in the judiciary. I also had 2 other Superior Court judges, 2 probate court judges, 2 juvenile court judges, 2 state court judges, 2 prosecutors, 2 defense attorneys, and 3 forensic experts on that committee. That committee worked over the last year, and this is one of their recommendations is Senate Bill 533. They have other work that they're going to be doing this year, which includes really looking at misdemeanors specifically and how can we divert misdemeanors out of the system. The challenge we have with misdemeanors is Dr. Risby, who many of you know is our chief medical officer. He's a forensic psychiatrist. He will tell you that many times our misdemeanor participants are the most in need of care. He likes to say they're not really capable of committing a serious crime. They're very sick individuals who need very intensive care. So we're going to take a close look at that over the next several months and hope to have some recommendations before the next legislative cycle around how do we divert misdemeanors. We're going to look at some other states. We have a group going down to Miami, including Dr. Oliver and some of our other team in a couple of weeks to look at what they're doing there. But we're taking this work very seriously about how do we decrease the number of people who are in jail needing a hospital bed. The other thing that Judge Goslin is working on with her fellow Superior Court judges is a bench card, which will allow judges to have some direction on how they should process this. Because one of the things you heard me say, 67% will be found competent. That means a lot of people's waiting in jail for about 10 months on an evaluation, but they're competent. So they could actually be running through the criminal justice system. And Judge Goslin has said, since she's been involved in this work with us, she's changed her own practice in her own courtroom and actually has a hearing and actually brings the person in instead of just signing an order, actually talks to the person, engages with the person. Sometimes she says, you know, you need to go, why don't we get you over to Avita? Why don't we have Avita come see you and just see if we could help provide that person service instead of them just being in a jail cell. So she's working on a bench card and is going to be providing training along with Dr. Oliver, who's our chief forensic officer at the Superior Court Judges Council Association meeting later this year. So there's a whole lot of work going on in this area to try to improve the outcome. The other thing I'll mention to you briefly is our jail in-reach program continues to move forward. We also have that down at Chatham County. I will actually be there on Wednesday to look at our jail-based restoration program and the jail in-reach program. We have 5 pilots of that up and operational now, and the numbers so far are looking good about the outcomes there, but we're trying to really focus on our criminal justice population and find ways to divert those individuals out of jail. The other thing, 2 other things I'll touch on, then we'll open it up for questions. Number one, the other thing I'm excited about, and I'll be down there also on Wednesday to look at the progress of this facility. We have what we call Operation New Hope, which is a facility at our Savannah Hospital that we're renovating 30 beds at the hospital. That'll be the first transitional program in the state hospital system. So this is going to be for individuals who are in the hospital that fall into that category. This person's been here 9, 10, 15, 20 years, and our doctors feel like clinically they're ready to get out, but the court's reluctant because of the nature of charges, etc. So this would be a place where we can say to the court, let them come to our Operation New Hope. Let us start providing some life skills training, maybe some technical school training, maybe GED training. Let them go out to technical school during the day, ultimately go get a job, come back at night, and then eventually work their way out of the hospital system into maybe a facility like one of our forensic departments or etc. But so we're excited about that program. Our hospital staff is excited about that program, and we hope that works and we can duplicate that around the state. Last thing I'll mention too is we plan hopefully the last week of session to do a press conference around our opioid work. We've been working hard behind the scenes around the opioid settlement dollars. $636 million the state has in the joint settlement agreement that comes through the trust. And I have the opportunity to serve as trustee of those funds. So we're going to be rolling out a forward-facing website. We're going to be announcing the portal, opening of the portal in the middle of April. We'll do the announcement later this month, but we'll actually start taking grant applications in April. We're also going to announce a statewide information tour, for lack of a better word, where we're going to go around the state in several different regions of the state and meet with providers, meet with other folks to give them information, help educate them about the process. So we're excited about this. It's been a lot of work behind the scenes. I know a lot of people have questioned what's taking so long. Georgia gets one opportunity to do it right, and we're trying to make sure we're methodical and strategic about how we roll out these dollars. So with that, you've heard me talk before about the bed study and about our workforce work. We're really excited about some of the things we're doing around workforce development. We're going to be rolling out an announcement soon that Theo Porter, who heads up our recruitment and learning area under HR, is going to be, we're going to create a separate department that he'll be heading up, laser focused on that work. Theo Porter does a great job. We're partnering with technical schools and some others right now. We've got a follow-up meeting next week. So we're close, I think, to making some major announcements around some of those initiatives, but a lot's happening around DBHDD and around mental health work here in the state. So with that, I'll see if there's any questions online, and if there's any questions here, I'll be glad to answer those. Hopefully I haven't bored you too bad, especially some of y'all that's heard this probably 5 or 6 times.
It's better every time.
All right, I've got Joellen Hancock with her hand raised.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful information with us and always being so willing to share in many arenas all of this information. I just had a quick question about, I did see that there was going to be a $2 million increase for Apex. Will that include telehealth within that?
That came out of the House budget that's now over in the Senate. We have talked to legislators about their willingness to amend that language to allow for telehealth in the schools also. So that's something our agency is very supportive of. And I know there's conversations going on right now. Obviously, that will ultimately, the way it's worded right now, I think it would be limited to just Apex in its traditional form. But we are hoping that that could get amended so it would include telehealth. We have a challenging time finding enough clinicians to staff schools. It's also not really cost effective oftentimes. You're never going to get enough reimbursement dollars for it to pay for itself. But we know with someone doing telehealth, they can cover up 15 schools with one clinician. And then by billing Medicaid and by billing private insurance, et cetera, they're able to make that cash flow in a way that it becomes sustaining from that point forward. So we're definitely hopeful that, and there's some schools in the state, it's just they don't have a workforce, and the only way we're going to be able to serve those schools is through telehealth. So I know it's a long way to answer your question, but it currently does not, but we hope we can continue to work with legislators so it does by the time the budget's voted on.
I appreciate that very much. Working for a school district myself, it's everything that you just mentioned, and just very critically needed right now with a lot of our youth and adolescents. So thank you again very much.
Okay, next I see we have State Representative Deborah Bazemore.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. How are you today?
Good. Good to see you.
Good. Thank you for your presentation. And my question is, since a lot of us are multitasking and not available for this meeting with all of this good information, is there a way that we can obtain that from you? You would provide that in some form or fashion to us?
Yes, actually, Kim is going to send this out to,
Okay.
to the group.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Good work. Thank you.
Well, good. Roland, you got a question, I know.
Several questions, but can't help myself. Talking about the forensic piece, and steps being taken, in order to either create more beds, free up existing beds, that type of thing. I take it that there's probably similar efforts going on to, get competency evaluations done faster, so that for those individuals who have not yet been convicted of a crime, who are in jail waiting for that they can take the off ramp as soon as possible. Is that sort of caught up within the work that you were talking about, sort of jail-based, or is it a separate process?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is separate. We were up to around 1,300 individuals in jail waiting on the initial evaluation. We've been able to bring that down. I haven't saw the numbers this week, but we were below 1,000 now, so we've trended in the right direction. We've done that several different ways. One, we have contracted with outside psychologists to for us to train, and then for them to be 1099 employees of the department, and they go out and help us do the evaluation. In Hall County, for instance, the professor there for now, Dr. Battles, I believe is her name, a forensic psychologist, and she's doing evaluations in Hall County. We have someone doing evaluations down in Chatham County. We have someone doing evaluations over in Augusta, and then we contract with Emory to do evaluations of adults in Fulton. We just recently, I don't know if the contract's completely finalized, but we're in process of contracting a joint venture between Emory and Morehouse for a new fellowship for child and adolescent. And they're going to be doing the evaluations for, Morehouse will be doing the evaluations for the juveniles. So we're trying to look at all paths we can, because the challenge we've had at the department, we've got about a 35% vacancy rate for psychologists at the agency, because we're paying about 24% below market rates. So that's a challenge for us. But as we've made strides in that area, we've made some improvements in that area, but we're really thinking, a term gets overused, but outside the box as much as we can about how can we create something out of nothing? How can we get some other folks to help us? And that's the same thing we're doing with people who are in jail. It's unacceptable to us, to me, to have someone sitting in jail for 10 months waiting on an evaluation. But I don't have a silver bullet where I can snap my fingers and say all of a sudden I'm going to make, because we did a bed study that showed we needed 119 more forensic beds, which is, I agree with that statement. That's about what we need. So we're not talking about, well, I know my lawyers get concerned when I talk about beds because of the settlement agreement. We're not talking about institutionalizing people who just because they have a mental health illness. These are individuals who specifically are in jail. So they're in an institution today. They've just been ordered to come to my hospital, and that's what it is. I think we're going to see that number grow over time, because I think judges, courts, family members, spouses, parents, they're becoming more cognitive of the fact that their loved one or the person in their courtroom has a serious mental illness. And as we reduce stigma, they're going to be more likely to ask for help and raise that as an issue, when before there was the embarrassment and shame. And sometimes these people would just go through the criminal justice system and no one would ever raise their hand and say, you need to check Kevin, there's something going on. And I think that number is going to increase as we continue to reduce stigma.
Oh, not related to that, but when we're talking about recognizing it's not necessarily within the full measure of ADHD, but when we're talking about APEX programs, I view APEX as mental health care that should be available to children in the schools where APEX is present. But what we're seeing is private insurers only account for less than 4% of coverage of the services. And it just sort of strikes me that You know, we have an interesting situation in which perhaps individuals who benefit from Medicaid are sort of receiving more and better simply because more, those services, and that we're not necessarily seeing the fruition of parity in the context of we need the private insurers to also be able to step up to be able to do the screening intervention, that type of thing that we see at these schools. And as I said, may not be PDHD and thoughts of where we ought to look in terms of talking with folks.
Yeah, a lot of the private insurance companies want to send their clients outside of Apex to other clinicians outside the school system. So that's a challenge, obviously. That's why I think telehealth's an option there, because I've talked to probably 24 schools in Georgia who currently have telehealth in the schools, and they are having, some of them have had on the physical health side. I talked to one school, they've been there 6 years, and they had only made an initial investment and no yearly cost associated with that, because they're billing Medicaid, they're billing private insurance. So, but their numbers work because they're spreading that cost to a lot of different schools, not just one. So that's a challenge. The other thing is, going away from your question a little bit, is going back, we just don't have enough. So even when we get an Apex counselor in the school, oftentimes they get stolen away and hired away either by the school system or someone else. And it's just a challenge. And I think we're putting some things in place with increasing reimbursement rates on the Medicaid side, which will ultimately increase rates long-term on the insurance side. And that's going to help, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Because the challenge that I'm seeing is private insurers for children. Georgia's children are going out of network 10 times more often for treatment for mental health than for physical health. That was from a 2019 study. There's going to be a new study that comes out probably in the next month that's going to show that's persistent, maybe even worse than a nationwide study. And so it appears that what we have is Medicaid sort of stepping up and saying we're going to start meeting better or more the needs of children and students, but we don't have that same coverage. And that, you know, what we need is something that, you know, that sort of sets a field that all of our students should be able to access mental health services, as opposed to sort of putting the individual or the family sort of one-on-one for each time that they have to get this method.
And hopefully, as you know, with federal parity, and then now with House Bill 1013 and state enforcement of parity, as the insurance commissioner continues to ramp up the reporting and the enforcement of that, we should see that improve, because there is a mechanism in the law for the insurance company to be held accountable. And I know Todd Representative Jones left, but I know we've had several meetings with me, DCH commissioner, the insurance commissioner, where leadership in the House and others are really concerned about wanting to make sure the agencies are held accountable for enforcement of that. So I think we'll see that improve over time, but I agree with you. Yes, ma'am.
And in the back, if you could just speak a little bit louder.
Some of it DCH, some of it's us. We worked, to try to streamline our processes, look for duplications where we can, like we're doing something, then they're having to redo it for DCH, because that's a lot of the issues. We cut some of that out. We also, just the background checks has been a challenge, and GBI through DOAD redid the fingerprint system, and they have a new provider. I was talking to Jennifer Ryback, who runs our division that handles that, and she was telling me they've just been told by the GBI that there's something where she was trying to streamline it even further, but there's something in the code that doesn't give us the ability to do that. So that'll be something we'll take up next year. Our lawyers' interpretation is different than their lawyers' interpretation. Imagine that, Roland. So the lawyers are going to have a conversation and see if we might be able to get the interpretation changed. But to answer your question, we're trying to streamline that process everywhere we can and continuing to try to work on that. The other thing that I will say is that our rates are also going to be a big part of that by increasing the number of providers. And then we also are, Chris and his team, our CFO, is also hopefully improving, and I've heard from providers this is happening, our payment. So we're getting payments out quicker than we were. You should continue, those of you who are providers should continue to see that improve. We've put some things in place to identify where the snags are. Sometimes it's at the program officer level, so the program officer is not reviewing the invoice for a period of time, and they sign off on it. Then it goes to our finance accounts payable. But we've got some tickers in place to flag that. It's not signed off on in a normal period of time. It goes to the supervisor. So long term, well, short term, you should already see improvements in that area, but long term, that should be streamlined, be a completely different payments. So it'll happen routinely like it's supposed to. And then on the yeah, we have conversations with them, but yeah, some of that we don't have a lot of control over. First number of people who are in the house, we're good, especially in the metro areas out here with mental illness. And we have partnership here in Atlanta with 3 of our CSBs that have ACT teams and other teams dedicated to that population. Our Georgia Housing Voucher Program here in Georgia now has about a little over 2,600 participants on the voucher program. And those individuals receive wraparound services while they're being housed. We're going to continue in order to make that program sustainable in the long term. We're going to look at moving some of those individuals over to the choice voucher. We're partnering with DCA. But what we are going to do is make sure that the individuals are stable, and we're also going to continue to provide the wraparound services to the individuals in the choice voucher, which has been part of the barrier because we're on the Georgia Housing Voucher, we're providing those wraparound services. So we're feel confident. We had another meeting this afternoon about that we're putting together a good game plan to kick that off. My goal is to move 500 to 700 individuals over the next 12 months to choice voucher, which will make Georgia Housing Voucher sustainable long term, because that'll open up additional slots. Because we're continuously seeing an increased demand. We're partnering with Catherine and others from the city of Atlanta on looking at what we can do to help them with their housing programs. Mayor's initiated. We had a meeting with the mayor's office today. After session, our hope is to put together a work group on the Behavioral Health Commission, specifically dedicated to homeless population that has a serious persistent mental illness, and bringing the right people to the table to have a serious conversation about what we're doing, what we need to do, what that looks like in the future. So a lot of work in that area. It's, as you know, very, very challenging. There's no easy answers oftentimes, and it's also not something where you can just put something in place, give someone one service, and then that's the end. It takes many, many years oftentimes. I know I was talking to Advantage, it's our CSP in Athens, and they've got street teams. Andy Reese, who's now with the court system there, but I've known her for many, many years, locked her up actually, but she's in recovery, and she worked on the street team. It took 7 years to get this one individual housed and into recovery. He's doing great, got a full-time job, living a good life, and he's got his own place, but they worked with him 7 years to get to that point. So you can't give up, you got to keep trucking forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for all of this.
There's a couple of different things important to understand. First is some of the opioid dollars went directly to certain counties who were participants in the lawsuit, and they have those dollars, and it's up to them how they spend. Second, larger counties like Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, they are considered their own region within the settlement agreement. So they will be in control of how they spend their money, their county's money. They'll get an allotment, they'll be in control of it. Then you have regional dollars outside of that, and then you have statewide dollars. The statewide or the regional dollars outside the metro areas. We will have the portal will open. It will stay open for a specific period of time, minimum 30 days. So portal's open for 30 days. People can apply for a grant. Portal closes. There'll be a review process. The portal will automatically send that application where it needs to go. So if it is a regional application for, say, the Savannah area, it goes to Region 5. So that every region has a regional advisory group that's appointed by the local governments for that region. It'll go there, they'll review those grants for their region, and they'll make recommendations. And then the portal will send that along with the recommendations to GOSAC, which is a statewide advisory group. That the governor appoints half of those members, and the local governments appoint half. They'll review it and make recommendations. There'll obviously be some subject matter experts looking and reviewing these applications outside of those advisory. Once GOSAC is finished, there'll be a public GOSAC meeting at least minimum of once a quarter. And once they make their recommendations, then the final decision will rest with the trustee. And all that'll be handled through the court. Payments, everything will come through the court. And it will announce a specific dollar amounts to plan to say we're going to release whatever the number is, $100. But $100 will be released in the first allotment of grants. The plan would be that we'll open the portal for a period of time, 30 days, 45 days, will close. There'll be a review process. How long that takes, it's hard to say, because when Tennessee opened their opportunities for the first time, they got 400 applications. So it may take a while. But once, I think, eventually, over a year or so, it'll become a routine process. It may be open once a quarter, it may be open twice a year, but there'll be a normal cadence that will occur. Yes.
Follow up to that, what the grants do for, exactly for the grants do for prevention, treatment, and recovery?
Yeah, there's, part of what we're going to publish when we do the press conference, and it'll be on the website, that'll be published also, is it has there's several documents. One is an inventory of the continuum of care in Georgia as it currently exists. So looking at the state, what resources are currently available and where in Georgia. And then the vision document of this is really where the state needs to be. This is what it should look like. I call it utopia. And then it starts becoming easy to see what are the gaps. And then there's a guardrails document that is like, if you want grant dollars, these are the guardrails, these are the bumpers you need to stay within to help get us where we ultimately need to be 18 years from now. And it's for buckets, which includes the prevention and the recovery and treatment, inpatient facilities, the whole 9 yards will be covered. So it'll have all of those buckets will be part of that. The other thing I'll say too is ACCG and GMA has really been a big help to us, because trying to wrangle every county commission, every city council in the state of Georgia to elect 7 individuals for their entire region to be on these advisory groups is a challenge. They will have that done by the end of the day on March 22nd. So I'm excited about that. They'll also have the local officials appointed to the state GOSAC by that. It can be for-profit, non-profit, as long as they're, achieving what we're trying to achieve, and they've obviously be able to apply. But I also encourage people just to remember, the larger counties, they have money, but a lot of them are behind right now. They've not appointed their advisory groups. So you're having conversations, in the Cobb counties and the Fulton counties and the DeKalb counties. That's going to be up to those local governing authorities, those local commissioners. They're going to they got to take the ball and run with it. We're not really able to interject through that process. The only thing I can do and supposed to do is make sure that the dollars are ultimately, that there's nothing that goes outside what the settlement agreement will have. So that's pretty broad. Well, thank y'all very much for your time. It's always good to see you. So if I can help you, let me know. Thank you.